I am Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Casser-Jayne Show, where along with my partner in politics, veteran White House correspondent, and Time and Newsweek alum Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days our lawmakers too. Before we get started, the Casser-Jayne Show podcast is always available at HalleyCasserJayne.com and wherever you most like to listen to your podcasts. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Hallie Show Quotes. Now, on this week's episode of the Casser-Jayne Show podcast, it's the week of the big C's: COVID, Cuomo, and Conman Trump. But that's just where we begin. Let's get started. It's Hallie and Matt time. Here we go. Okay, Matt, so here's where we start, because here's where we've been starting for almost a year. COVID. What a mess. I'm concerned. I'm freaked out, I have to say, but I live in Florida, and I don't think there's anybody who lives in the state right now who isn't completely and totally freaked out. The stress here is getting incredibly high. 1 out of every 2,000 Floridians has been hospitalized with COVID. That's with 40% of the population having been vaccinated.
Sure.
That's just terrifying. And we have this lunatic governor. You try and be professional when you're doing a show like this, but there comes a time when you just say, no, this guy has got to be called out for who and what he is. And he's a lunatic, getting away with being called a Republican. He's a lunatic. Let's start here. He issued a mandate that prohibits mask mandates in schools. By the way, schools are going back in 5 days here. We're going to talk about the parents of these poor kids, but he threatens to cut funding to schools that issue the mandate. I mean, let's just start with that. How insane is that?
Yeah, well, he's a big nanny state, Republican. He's, instead of allowing businesses to make their own decisions about how they should run their business and keep their employees safe, have mask requirements, he's saying no business can do that. He's saying no school system can do that. He's saying no city, town, or county can do that. He's making all the decisions from Tallahassee for the state, instead of allowing any kind of Republican principle of allowing decision-making to be made by individuals and the closest form of government. But it's bad public health. I mean, it's clear that while the Delta variant is surging, the best thing people can do is get vaccinated if they haven't been already. But barring that, mask wearing makes sense. And since kids especially cannot get vaccinated, kids under 12, there do seem to be a lot of incentives to have mask wearing in schools. So it's awful policy, it's hypocritical, and it's very DeSantis.
Here's the deal that's, to me, first of all, the CDC, who are doctors, mask mandates, please. And by the way, it's not just him. I mean, I got to tell you, because I'm just infuriated by all of this. But Marco Rubio, Dr. Rubio, suddenly he has an MD behind his name, says this is mask mandates isn't going to stop this thing. Okay, guys, if none of this is going to stop, at least get up there and say get vaccinated. And DeSantis did one PSA last week, and now he's shut up down on that one. And let me just tell you, Matt, his poll numbers are cratering. He's behind Charlie Crist right now in the polls. Charlie Crist, the former governor, now again running for governor as a Democrat. So I'm not sure I understand a lot of this. I mean, okay, let's talk the political side of this. I mean, does this make sense politically at this point?
Well, not at the moment, not when the Delta variant is surging in the state and hospitalizations and illnesses are way up. No, it doesn't now. For a while there, when results weren't didn't seem to be as bad as other states, he could kind of lay claim to saying, hey, we kept things open, damn it. But now it's clearly bad policy, and it is costing him politically.
17,000 Floridians. Let me just throw this in real quick. This just came across my desk. 17,000 Floridians are hospitals. 140 deaths yesterday. 200 was the high for deaths, and that's with vaccinations. Now we're still at 140, and the schools are and the hospitals, Matt, are ridden with young kids, who they say don't get COVID. Yes, they do. Sorry, I just needed to throw that in there. Talk to me.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's public health disaster in Florida and mostly other southern states where with low vaccination rates. I think the only upside the last few days is that there do seem to be an increase in vaccinations. In some states, people seem to be getting the message a little more, but there's still a long way to go. And, DeSantis is not helping. It is hurting him politically. I don't know where this is going to be by November of 2022, but for now, it is bad for him.
He calls Florida a biomedical security state. Let me throw this out to you, and I really want to hear what you think about this. We talk about this politically, right? This is the chosen political move by the current ideation of the Republican Party. Is it possible these people are really just buck-ass friggin' crazy?
Well, you in the past have called him fascist. I don't think he's both. I think.
I do think he has fascist tendencies. I'm not.
Yeah, I look. I don't know. He's crazy. No, I don't think he's crazy. I think he has a position, whether it's crass political calculation or whether it's an ideological belief. It almost doesn't matter. The point is he does have this position. But calling Florida a biomedical security state is like calling the Titanic unsinkable. Well, you can call it whatever you want. It's still underwater.
So let me look at it from another point of view, or ask you to look at it from another point of view. So here you have it, right? And okay, so you're saying you think he's just made political calculation.
I'm saying I don't know.
And he may not be crazy, or he may be crazy. There's clearly something not right here, because when you start to see your numbers crater and you dig in, and we're going to talk about the digging in a minute, but there is something crazy to that, if not stupid. So that would be another argument. Is he stupid? What he is, I did some research on him this week, Matt, and I looked to see like a little bit about his childhood. There's very little out there. Talks about his dad moving them to some small community in Florida at one point, that he played baseball. I think he went to school on a baseball scholarship. But there's virtually nothing about his father in terms of what his father did for a living, or his mother. I mean, he's really scrubbed a lot of his childhood if you go on the web. But I did find that his father is a bigot and a racist and a white supremacist in style. So there is that is behind some of DeSantis, because we need to understand who this dude is on some level, I think. But he's stuck, and he doesn't seem to be wanting to pivot, but he's being very Trumpian. So let's talk about Biden and DeSantis. He must have heard our show last week, because the minute I said he wasn't doing enough, he started doing a lot more, President.
You're referring to Biden.
Yes.
DeSantis.
I said yeah. So he went after DeSantis and Greg Abbott. I thought pretty heavy. Talk about that.
Well, yeah, I think, the administration's job one is to try to contain the COVID crisis. And they're not going to be able to do it with governors like Greg Abbott of Texas and DeSantis in Florida banning any mask restrictions at the local level and by companies. And so it was inevitable Biden would have to come in more direct conflict with them. But Biden's got his own problems. I think there's been confusion about the CDC's mandates and use of its authority. And, he's got his own issues to deal with.
But he did go after.
He doesn't have bad policies the way that, DeSantis and Abbott do, but he's had some execution issues. At the same time, they've done, enormously good work in terms of getting, the vaccines out and available.
I think
the problem at this point is one of human behavior and people not responding to authority. I think authority telling people to get vaccinated is not working very well.
I think he went after Abbott and DeSantis, and he told them to get the hell out of the way, that they were in the way of getting people vaccinated, and boy, was he right. So let's just start with what exactly he said. I always think...
I agree with that.
Right. I always think with Biden, he's always a week late. I went back and listened to some of our conversations, and whatever I say on this show, by the next week, he finally gets to it, and I'm calling him out on it the week before. So I think that they were a little slow in that office to get the zeitgeist and to respond to it. It's a very careful administration, I'll say that. That said, he did go after DeSantis, and DeSantis came back, slapping.
Right. He sure did. He sure did.
And that concerned me even more because he's doing the Trump. He's digging in. Now, who does that help? Because the last people on the minds of this particular governor are the people in the state of Florida. But they are starting to get it. The vaccination rates are ticking up just a little bit. Even among, by the way, Fox News viewers are starting to get vaccinated. But there's a problem here. I want to talk about the parents in these states who are being, and particularly in Florida, who are being asked, oh my God, Matt, to make like a Sophie's Choice, because they're not going to be mandates in school. Last night, the schools said that there was sent a letter out to the parents of children saying we are not going to be able to socially distance. We don't have the room. Broward County, which is one of the largest counties in the state, initially said they would not abide by the mandate and they were going to mandate masks in school. And then DeSantis said, well, we're going to cut your funding to the schools. Now, take that for a spin in the courts because that's taxpayer money. But that's a different conversation. And now Broward County this morning said, yes, we are going to abide by those mandates. I think because you've got some lawyers saying that the mandate that DeSantis issued is illegal. Now, I've been appealing to my friends in the legal community in the state publicly, and I can't get one lawyer to come forward and say, take it for a spin in the courts. But they're at least saying it publicly if they're not willing to go and take on DeSantis.
You're talking about getting a lawyer to challenge DeSantis's executive order banning any local or private sector mask requirements.
Exactly. And you and some of them who, like the Grim Reaper, this guy Daniel Elfelder, who, was out there with billboards and everything at the first or second wave, they've all been shut down. They're all quiet. They're all afraid of losing their law licenses and this dude going up against them. Seriously, it's bizarre. So I find that incredible that you can't get a lawyer or some class action person, a specialist to take on the parents. But the parents are being asked to make a Sophie's Choice. And here's the choice. Send your kids to school because that's what's mandated. And risk your kids getting the vaccine, getting the COVID, or keep them home, and then you're in real big trouble because you got nobody to take care of your kids. Or you send the kids and the kids get COVID. Who does the guilt rest on? I mean, it's a nightmare for parents right now in Florida. And if you I have a lot of friends who have school-age kids. They are just freaking out. And this morning's letter saying we can't social distance totally wiped them out. They're hysterical.
Right. Yeah, you're going to have to get your kid to wear a mask because while the school system's requirement of wearing masks seems to be struck down by DeSantis's order, an individual can still choose to go to school in a mask. But that puts an enormous burden on an 8-year-old. You know,
Oh, it's a tremendous.
to wear a mask on their own.
Well, and if everybody's not wearing a
6-year-old.
yeah, exactly. Imagine like the kid who's not wearing the mask, saying, "You sissy, you're wearing a mask." That's the kind of stuff that's going to happen in schools. And then you talk about this.
Yeah, I think it will.
Yeah, and you have the teachers who are also being kind of bizarre in all of this. I mean, this is why I'm sick. I mean, because Matt knows I haven't been feeling well. I think the stress of it, you don't know where to go. You don't know how to answer it. It's all screwed up. There's no way out. There is absolutely, at this point, no way out. So I'm going to take it back to Biden. And I'm going to say, President Biden, you got nothing to lose by taking it for a spin and issuing a mask mandate for all schools. He's willing to do it and buck the system on the eviction moratorium. But these people...
Well, no question, that's a big legal leap, yeah.
Well, particularly because the Supreme Court made a decision on it. They haven't on this mask thing, as far as I remember, did they? I don't think so.
No. So
here we are. So I'm simply saying, if you can't get these crazy Republican governors to do what they need to do, and they're standing in the way of saving our asses, and we're going to talk about that even further in a minute, then I just say, why doesn't the administration stop with the...
I don't know why, yeah, I mean...
Why are they pussyfooting around?
Why isn't Miami-Dade challenging it in court?
I'm telling
you... Or Broward, or Palmer.
I don't understand any... your teacher salary... Your future as a lawmaker. They're afraid of DeSantis. They're afraid of the crazies.
The county attorney generals and the county executives are afraid of him.
Losing their jobs, losing their money, losing, Yes, what other reason can you think of? I mean, look.
Well, look. Sure. I mean, I think it would make sense for DOJ to challenge these.
And so why do you think they're not?
I don't know. I don't live down there. I don't have the sense of why a county would issue a mask mandate and then not defend it in the courts.
Like I said, there's something so crazy going on down here, which is why everybody is so stressed down here. By the way, I get a lot of emails asking me, how, when you go out, what's going on? And when I go out, nobody is wearing masks still, even with all of this. They're just not putting the masks on. Now, the businesses are under the same mandate. So the businesses can't mandate masks. Now, corporations are. They did it gingerly. I mean, and this is interesting. Disney issued a mask mandate and couched it in if it's an indoor ride or an indoor eatery or, something. And DeSantis didn't challenge them. Walmart started with just as executive or people in high positions within the store. Now I think they're saying all employees in the store. But it's interesting to me that DeSantis isn't challenging any of these companies either. So I think that's kind of fascinating.
Right. But your mom and pop stores
can't do anything.
Right.
Yeah. But okay, so but let's get back to you went to the local level. I want to go to the federal level. Why is Biden not doing what he needs to do? He's got nothing to lose.
I think he's. Yeah, I agree. I think it's smart. I think you're right.
So
why not?
Yeah. I mean, you know what? If he institutes it or he legislates it, even if it goes to court, it's going to take a time to get into court. There's a lot here I just don't understand. There is another interesting aspect to this, and that is, you remember he stopped the cruise ships from having passport or requiring, right. Okay. So these huge corporations couldn't do anything about it or wouldn't do anything about it, but the Virgin Islands did. And they told DeSantis to take his cruise ships and keep them because they're not coming and docking in the Virgin Islands unless passengers are all showing passport that they've been vaccinated. I just thought that was really funny. You can't get the big guys. I want Asa Hutchinson. I'm going to bring it up because you and I are old enough to remember him in the Clinton impeachment days when he was a firebrand. Arkansas, about to retire from the governorship, and he had issued a no mask mandate, and signed it into legislation, and he is now doing a mea culpa. That's just so funny. It's so funny to be alive long enough to know who he really is as to how he's redone his image. Because people were applauding it, and I'm going, and I remember the days back when Asa Hutchinson was leading the fray against Bill Clinton. You got anything there? It's amusing to me.
Well, I think all these governors are making, political and health calculations about what to do next, and there's going to be some, slip sliding on these things.
So when when citizens get COVID, and they're the Republicans who've been following their leaders, it'll be curious to see what percentage of them have to suffer before any of this changes. This morning it was announced that 5,042 new cases in Tokyo of COVID, the highest ever, of course traced to the Olympics. And they're saying shutdowns are going to be necessary. And I think about all the places in this country right now that are having these, letting all of these big things go on. I noticed, by the way, that Trump isn't out doing his rallies. Suddenly stopped amidst all of this. What do you think of that? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, good point. Good point. I guess he hasn't scheduled any, right? He hasn't canceled any, but he hasn't scheduled any either.
No, and he was going. At the beginning of the summer, he said he was going to be everywhere.
Right.
The only place he isn't is doing a PSA saying, "You idiots, get vaccinated."
Right.
I want to do a shout out. What you were going to say?
No, nothing.
Okay, I want to do a shout out to the governor of New Jersey for having the courage to call the anti-vaxxers who were making him crazy during a campaign, a talk he was giving, and calling them knuckleheads. Maybe a few other governors want to take that position and call them what they are.
Right. He was getting heckled by anti-vaxxers.
And he let him have it.
And he let him have it.
And also, I want to do this, Dr. Fauci. He's starting to read the Riot Act. And he's saying that if you don't contain this Delta variant, what's coming will look like child's play. So I guess on the subject of all of this, for now, we leave it there. And we move on to the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. You want to start?
Sure. Well, look, he's in deep political trouble and likely to be forced out of office. He's said all along about the many sexual harassment allegations against him that we should wait for the investigation being conducted by the state's attorney general to be concluded. Well, that investigation was concluded this week, and it's lengthy, and it's detailed, and it's damning, and it's includes all kinds of instances of Cuomo engaging in harassing behavior, some of which were known from the complainants themselves and press reports, but some of which are new and quite bad, including, I think, in some ways the most politically damaging from a young woman who's a state trooper in New York assigned to the protective detail for the governor, who he was verbally harassing, touching, she said made him feel creepy, who he may have gotten on his detail in violation of state police protocol, which would have required her to be more experienced. So there's nothing good about the report for Cuomo. The state's entire congressional delegation has called on him to resign. The president's called on him to resign. No lawmaker has said he should stay. He's likely to be impeached if he resists resigning. So he's in a very bad predicament, and I don't see any way he can turn it around.
I never know how to deal with these things. I really, really don't. Um, I'm gonna say something that may be shocking to some people, but I have to say it. There there there's a generation gap in this, and I'm trying to be really fair here, because it concerns me that we're on this Me Too movement thing has pushed these things into kind of a weird thing. I just want to say that the other side of it is I was annoyed a little bit with some of the women getting up on camera last night and saying, well, he's trying to gaslight us because he says it's misconstrued. And I just think that that's not a good argument, because you know what? There are two sides to every story. I think we've heard more of the women's argument than we have Cuomo's. Maybe that's partly his fault, but not Chris, but Andrew's fault.
Andrew.
Right, and I have Chris on the mind because I think Chris is being treated unfairly too. But I just want to say, everybody has a different reality, and the problem with some of these things is, and it happened to Al Franken, what he thought was funny, somebody else didn't think was funny.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from, and I'm sympathetic to that. But if you look at the details in the Attorney General's report, especially from both the state trooper, in which it is not a matter of like misinterpreting a crack or a brief hug, but his kind of stroking her in ways that are clearly sexual and provocative. And this is
I didn't read the report. What was her response when he did that?
Well, she's on his protective detail, so she just kind of took it.
Well, see, that's the problem. That's the problem.
Well, it's not really.
No. I'm a woman. I will tell you, it's happened to me.
Well, it's a different
turn around
situation.
And punch the guy? No.
If you'd let me finish,
okay.
It involves someone on the security detail. They're in a different position than the other employees. They have a gun. They're responsible for protecting him at the moment. They have to be vigilant. They can't get in a pissing match with him.
So you don't do it that second, but 5 seconds after it occurred, you go and you report it.
Which is precisely what she did. She did report it, and they basically told her to shut up.
Oh, then she should have gone to the cameras or resigned from her job. I'm just saying we have to be very careful. And I'm the woman saying it, and you're the man. I think it's interesting.
I know you're the woman saying it, and I think there have certainly been cases of generational misunderstandings, personal misunderstandings. Yeah. But if you look at the panoply of charges against him in their totality and in the specifics, including, one which is essentially, full out assault with hands under the blouse, groping her breast, that's
disgusting.
Open.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
That's not open to misinterpretation.
I don't know, because we don't know what the woman was doing. Listen, we're not going to agree on this, that's clear, but I'm just simply saying I think we have to be very careful with these things. And
but again, I understand we have to be careful, and I'm not saying what he should do, but I am saying that this is very different than the Franken case. Most of which involved behavior prior to his becoming U.S. Senator. So take a look at the report in its totality. Just flick through it. It's available. Listeners can do the same and come to your own conclusions.
Yeah,
but
like I said, it's not that I think that he's innocent. It's just that I think that some of the way this is being handled needs to be looked at in a different way. And let me put it in the context of this. How many allegations against Trump with big attorneys behind Trump? And he's walking around. And Tish James did this in 5 seconds. In fact, it was published the night before that she had met with 11-hour, thing with Cuomo, and didn't even wait 24 hours. The next morning she got before the cameras. I'm simply saying there's politics in this too. It's concerning to me. I think we need to find a better way to deal with these issues. And I think we need to set some rules up on the game. If you're harassed and you feel that you're harassed, you don't have 5. You need to get to whoever it is who's a superior or get in front of the cameras, and do it. Let's leave no room for, questioning what's concerning here. That's my position.
Well, I think if you look at the report, you'll see that's largely what happened. In any event, he's I see no way out.
Yeah, there is no way out for him. He's just being quiet, and he's going to try and pull off what the guy in Virginia did.
The Democratic Party is very different than the Republican Party. Every office holder in New York has either been silent or asking him to resign. No one has stood up to defend him. That's just not true in the Republican Party in similar cases.
And that's an issue to me, too, because there is the politics of it. That's an issue to me.
There's no question no one in no Democratic office holder at this point wants to be seen defending him.
Right. I understand that. What are the ramifications if he is removed?
And look, I think the other thing is that this is part and parcel of a kind of conduct as governor that's grown wearisome to a lot of people in Albany, including those who've been allies of his.
Well, he didn't have very many allies, has he? He's a pretty hated guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bullying, the arrogance,
didn't help.
The abusiveness crossed all gender lines, and I think they're tired of him. And I think if he had a little more reservoir of goodwill, maybe he'd be doing a little better at this point. But he doesn't have that anymore. And I think a lot of New York voters now are sort of tired of the drama. They just,
I'll tell you another one.
With him.
Where's his long-living girlfriend, who he just ended a 20-year or 15-year relationship with? That is interesting that she has not come to his defense.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, you don't see Carrie Kennedy, Cuomo's first wife, saying he never would do this. We had our differences, but gosh, he's a great guy. She's about the only person who could offer words that would help him.
I see all of that too, sure. And the other one is I feel sorry for Chris Cuomo because he's in between a rock and a hard place.
Well, that's a shitty place to be, no question.
Right.
But, I mean, I do think when these guys get into sort of their third and fourth terms in office, there's a kind of arrogance that...
Unless you're a Republican and it happens your first term in office.
The sexual harassment issue is completely different in the two parties. And if were Andrew Cuomo a Republican, he'd be okay.
So, no question about it. And the other thing that I want to say to you is, excuse me, what are the political ramifications? He's replaced, and then an election comes up, and the chances of a Republican taking the governorship?
De minimis, I think. Okay. It is a very Democratic state. They would be done with Cuomo at that point. I mean, you don't know. They could nominate someone who's a really bad candidate and, freakishly lose. But right now, the leading candidate is a super pro-Trump congressman named Lee Zeldin, a Republican congressman from Eastern Long Island. I cannot see him, except under extreme circumstances, getting elected governor in New York State. So... unless it was against Cuomo.
Yeah. Zeldin is very, by the way, Cuomo-like. He's got an edge to him.
Yeah, and he's gone full Trump.
Yeah.
Full Trump.
So, you remember your friend Dick Cheney?
Yes, my good friend Dick Cheney, yes.
Dick Cheney is weighing in a little bit about what's going on in the Republican Party. Are you surprised? He said he's deeply troubled.
Well, that seems modest given what's gone on with his daughter, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who's been drummed out.
Well, she's the one who
Republican
said
House leadership.
Yeah.
But
still, it's Dick Cheney saying that.
Yeah, look, I mean,
that's pretty amazing. You say not because you think it's because he only said it because of his daughter.
No, I'm sure he believes it. I mean, I think the bad side of Dick Cheney is he's obstinate and doesn't care what anyone thinks. And the good side of Dick Cheney is he's obstinate and doesn't care what anyone thinks. And, in this case, he's right. And, he was like the only Republican who was for gay marriage, for a long time. Back
he has
when
a gay daughter.
Like Barack Obama and John Edwards were not. So, he marches. I'll give him this much: he marches to his own beat, and that's in this case a broken clock is right twice a day. I think he's right about this.
You just love that Dick old Cheney. We have to talk about this, and I'm going to ask you this, not just as an opinionator, but as a journalist. Trump's attempt to overturn the elections, Matt. I mean, some of the stuff that's starting to come out is pretty damning, to say the least. Excuse me. And there's hardly anything about it. It's it's like on page 12 at this point. When I actually think that to stop all the crap that's going on, as I've said 1,000 times, it doesn't stop until they finish Trump. And it should be the number one story, or at least the number two story after COVID. And it's not. It's just kind of out there, kind of like a hot air balloon just being pushed around in the wind. Talk to me about that, because this is scary shit that this guy really did attempt a coup.
Yeah, well, I think every detail is more damning than the one before. I mean, he was into everything to try to stay in office. And, it's quaint now to think there were pundits who thought, well, he doesn't really care if he wins, does he even want a second term, I mean, clearly he was doing everything he could to stay in office. And I imagine, we'll find out more about what he did in the days leading up to January 6th and the day of that will be even worse. And so that's where we're at. It's
so
I hope this House panel can uncover more.
You think it's the House panel that should be doing it, and I think there are a couple of other avenues here. I think somebody in the media ought to be writing, Matthew, people who can write incredibly well and succinctly. Matthew, write.
Yes, Hallie. Yeah, what should I be doing?
I want you to write a in-depth piece and point out everything that's out there under the auspices of, if we don't finish Trump, none of this goes away, including COVID. Because I think the secret to getting rid of COVID is to get rid of Trump.
Well, I don't know what getting rid of means. He lost, and
it means if they put him behind
him,
that would be good.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen, but as we've talked about before.
Yes, I understand that. But
look, I know what you mean. Like, if Donald Trump decided to never speak publicly again, I think the country would be better off. But that is not the world we live in.
When Joe Biden finally opened up a mouth on COVID and finally started being aggressive in the last week, the amount of people getting vaccinated went up exponentially. When Fox News stopped kowtowing to Trump on the COVID vaccine and started saying, we need to get this vaccine, people did it. And I just think, as a nation, there are answers to the problems that we have, but we're not following the path to get those answers out to the public. And I think it needs to change. And there are different avenues to do that. There's the January 6th Commission, I agree. There's the law. It seems our Attorney General is kind of mixed on how to handle the executive branch of government. And then there's the media. And we have a responsibility, too. And I'm simply saying that the media has been somewhat remiss here. It's like we can't walk and chew gum at the same time, and we're focusing on A, but therefore B gets pushed to the side. And when I think how all of this plays together, I think we have to change. I think we have to alter the way in which we're handling this. And I got a great journalist, writer as a partner in this conversation, and I really wish you would do a piece.
Okay. Taken under advisement.
Okay. I'm going to push you until I get you to do what you need to do. Your friend Tucker Carlson was in Hungary.
Yes, he's still there. He's there all week.
You want to explain that to me? Because I don't get it.
Oh, unfortunately, I think I do get it. There's a big conference of kind of, quasi-fascists in Budapest this week. The leader of Hungary, Viktor Orban, is probably the most authoritarian leader in Europe, or certainly in NATO. And Carlson's speaking at this conference this week, so he's taking a week in Hungary from scenic Budapest, where he can talk about how great things are over there, as Orban strong arms all of his political opponents. It's an ugly situation, and there is a fondness for authoritarians and strongmen in the Republican Party that's unfortunately growing.
What's his goal?
Tucker's goal?
Yeah.
I assume, ratings, growing his empire within Fox. He has a production company within Fox. He's making more. He's bigger. He's key to their subscription strategy with Fox Nation. I'm sure it's to keep growing that. And I think at this point, I think the leaks of the shit he's saying.
Do you think he wants to run for office?
I'm sure he's happy to use the prospect as a way to boost his already considerable fame and fortune. Do I think he wants to run for office? Probably not. He knows what that involves. And I don't think, calling, state party chairman and talking to backbenchers in Congress and doing all that is what he really wants to spend his time doing. And and I don't want to say it's a step down being president from where he is, but I think I just don't think he wants. The day he does that, he's the next platform. I don't think he'll. I don't think he'll run for office. I could be wrong, though. I didn't think he'd become an authoritarian either.
So that takes us to Fox, who's becoming a little bit more responsible, and the numbers are showing in the amount of Fox viewers who are getting vaccinated. But can they continue on this bent? You were going to say?
Well, I don't know. They can do. I mean, as you said, they're a little more pro-vaccination than they were a few weeks ago. I think the sad thing is they'll do what they want, and public health be damned. So they could go back to full They're certainly anti-mask mandates. They might be kind of sort of pro-vaccine, but they're against other public health measures that would limit the scope and damage of this disease.
Well, as a good friend of mine said to me yesterday, 2,000 Floridians are in hospital. 99.9% are the unvaccinated. By the way, the other comma, after that comma comes, and 99% of them are Republicans and Fox viewers.
Well, I don't know if that's entirely true. There are a lot of kids. There are a lot of kids who are in there. I don't think they're. I think they're
24. Yeah, but the kids are the children of Fox News viewers.
Well, that's possible. I think there's some kids younger people who just didn't get vaccinated out of a sense of hubris that they need to worry rather than being persuaded ideologically, but. Regardless, so whatever the details are, and we can never really totally know them, Fox News' role is not, to say the least, not been constructive.
No. And now you have all of these little satellite.
Sure, you've got the ones to the right of Fox.
Yeah, exactly. And that's concerning because I don't see anything like that happening on the left. Speaking of on the left, what do you think about what happened in Ohio with Chantel Brown being out Nina Turner? Is that a bellwether for the Democratic Party that they're not going to go left? Progressives don't have the power they thought they had?
I think it's a little more nuanced than that. I think there's no question a lot of minority voters are not into voting for the most woke candidate, and so we saw that with black voters saving Joe Biden in 2020 and rejecting the more left candidates. We saw that here to some degree, and we saw that in New York City with Eric Adams. I don't think there's not a lot of support for defund the police and other sort of left agenda in the black community. But that said, I think progressives who have a seriousness of purpose, like Alana Presley or AOC or Bowman and others, I think they can win races. Turner was too. They can't be anti-Democratic Party. And she was like, screw the Clintons. I might vote for Jill Stein. I might be Jill Stein's running mate. But they can't be anti-Democratic Party, and they can't be too sort of, clearly in it for themselves. I mean, all politicians are in it for themselves, but they have to have a seriousness of purpose that I think Turner lacked. And so I think there's still fertile ground for, like, it might be called like, sort of the higher echelon of squad members. I don't think you can replicate, Ilhan Omar and Tlaib around the country.
No, I agree with you on that. I think that's what it is. But Nina Turner is a radical.
If your main issue is like, Jew bashing, I don't think that's a winning formula in districts. If you're just like kind of a lefty, I think you can do okay.
Speaking of Jew bashing,
right?
Let's go to the Iran deal because I think this is another story that's underreported right now. The Iran deal is no longer because of Trump. I happen to agree with that, and it doesn't look like the Biden administration is moving anywhere fast since the installation of this new super radical. What do they call their leaders, Ayatollahs, has taken place. And there are bombs going off and weird things from the Iranians on Israeli ships, things like that. And Bennett, who's the new prime minister, remember Bibi Netanyahu? How quickly we forget, Matt, right? Is indicating he's about had enough. Your thoughts?
Right. Yeah, well, there was what seemed to be a drone attack on an Israeli ship this past week. I think the Israelis have a policy of retaliation for any attacks on them, and I suspect there will be some. Now, the Israelis, possibly with American aid, were almost certainly behind a number of explosions in Iran and, dealing with their nuclear facilities, but also other things. So, I think what we're seeing is a little bit more of a hot war than Cold War. And, and it's, it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
It is very dangerous. And this new Ayatollah guy seems to be off the friggin' wall more even than the others.
Well, yeah, this is the problem. There's the Iranian moderates almost always prove to be illusory, and the hardliners prove to be worse than you think. Yeah, it's a bad situation. I think the Biden people are probably, there's no reason for them to try to rush back to the table on this deal. I mean, I think they want to use whatever levers they can to try to curb Iranian behavior before we, potentially end up with a Gulf War. So,
yeah, it's interesting also, the control over Bennett. Bennett is a hothead, far more of a hothead, by the way, than Netanyahu, and certainly more right-wing than Netanyahu. But there seems to be some kind of a conversation going on between they and us, and I think he's curtailing what he would like to do.
Yeah, well, he's not like Bibi. He's not going to stick it in the eye of a Democratic administration. That's part of what undid Bibi.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think that's probably politically and strategically wise on Bennett's part. And well, at some point, if Iranian provocations increase, if the Israelis are going to do something, I don't think it's going to be bomb Tehran, but it's going to be something.
I'm gonna say Afghanistan to you, which is
you can say Afghanistan.
Thank you. I just did.
Okay.
I've been confused about the withdrawal. Particularly even as we watch how things go really dissolve into chaos over there. But when I think of Iran, I think maybe I understand why they're leaving Afghanistan and going to let the special ops take over there. It's money, number one. They're tired of spending money in a place that we need the money over here big time for. That's part of it. But I also think it has something to do with how they're going to move the focus from A to B to C. China, Iran, Russia seem to be the new focus. Is there anything there? Or am I just...
Well, I don't know. I don't think the troops from Afghanistan are getting redeployed.
No, I don't mean it that way. I meant money. Not troops, money.
Yeah, I don't know if it was, I mean, the government is spending so much now that the sums are relatively modest in perspective. So I think it's more war fatigue than anything.
Stupid move.
And
just a stupid move.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's really, either you kind of stay another 20 years or you go.
Yeah, like I said, money.
I don't think, yeah, well, money and I think, yeah, but also public support and political support in both parties.
I don't think anybody really cared about Afghanistan. Were you sitting at your parties and talking about, boy, we need to get out of Afghanistan in a hurry?
I do think there was war fatigue after 2 decades of this. I mean, it's 5 times longer than World War II, and it's true it doesn't command the headlines when American troops aren't dying in roadside bombs every day, but it was still extremely taxing. And but look, I think this rapid withdrawal is clearly not leading to good results with the Taliban brazenly taking over the country. I think there had been hope for some kind of peaceful settlement, but clearly the Taliban has no incentive to do that, and they seem to have the momentum with them. Now, they're still a long way from marching into Kabul, but it's bad.
It's scary over there, is what it is. It's damn scary, and I feel sorry for the women.
Look, well, you got to feel sorry for anyone who helped the Americans whose life is now in extreme danger, and their families. And it's right, submission of women under the Taliban again.
All right, I want to get back to Trump again real quick because I forgot something. He's fighting his release of his tax returns. Yikes!
Right.
Here we go again. I don't know. Most lawyers that I've heard on say he doesn't have a leg to stand on, but maybe he can slow it down again. I'm not sure. What's the story on that? He just is defiant on this, and at some point, somebody's got to say, "Give us the tax returns, IRS, or else."
Yeah, I think all these things are going to keep slogging through the courts. He's going to fight every step of the way. Others who are in possession of the tax returns, like the accountants and others, will come under increasing pressure to hand them over. So I don't know. We'll see where this goes.
I just needed to bring that up. And Biden is about to get the biggest win of a president in a very long time. How do you think?
Well, that's right. It's
go ahead.
Yeah, the big infrastructure bill that he worked so hard for. It seems like it can pass. I mean, you never want to say definitely because there's still, some obstacles, but he seems to have forged enough of a consensus in the troubles in the U.S. Senate, gotten enough Republican support for this plan that it looks like it's going to get passed at some point. So that is a big win. It's going to make a big difference, I think, in terms of both the psychology in Washington, but also in terms of repairing the country's infrastructure. It's not as much as Biden wanted, but still a lot of money. And I think that's welcome.
So let me put this in this context, because Biden announced this morning he was going to issue an executive order that half of new vehicles will be electric by 2030. The thing that was holding this thing up to some degree was that they were going to have the second, what do they call that, reconciliation bill? Yeah. And he took that matter into his own hands and said no, because it was most of what they wanted was on this issue of climate change. So I found that fascinating that this was announced this morning.
Yeah, well, I think he wants to get as much of these environmental things as he can, because, the bill that contains a lot of that stuff is to face this very rocky road. And so makes sense that he would do this now. And look, there's so much impetus for electric vehicles. I mean, every TV ad is for an electric car now. And, all the big three have all moved towards electric in a big way. And, I think electric sales are way ahead of, not in aggregate, but in terms of growth, ahead of internal combustion. So, the wind is at his back on this.
So when you have that, and then you have Trump issuing Nazi-like membership cards to his supporters. Oh, God, we're living in La La Land, Matt. You hear me? It's La La Land.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, it's beyond everything. And now they're trying to recall Gavin Newsom. Oh, my word. Yeah. How do we circle back and leave all of this?
As we wrap up our hour here?
Yeah.
Well, Hallie, it's been interesting for a long time now. It's not getting any less interesting.
Do you ever have days that you say, I never want to do this again? I'm sick of this. Like, I just can't take in any more of this. It's just so painful to watch the stupidity. Do you ever get like that?
Oh, sure.
You've been doing this how long?
It's, 300 years, something like that. A long time. So it's look, it's this, it's taxing, but it's our country, and we want it to succeed from wherever we come in on the opinion scale, so inshallah.
God, that's a funny word.
Next week.
Yeah. Let me just, I'm going to close out where I want to say it to you. Here's where I think we've gone wrong. Laws should be enacted to protect the lawful, Matt. Those who respect the community, not those who defy the science, not the unlawful. And DeSantis and Republicans are fighting for the unlawful, and we need to stop the Trumps and the DeSantises and the Greg Abbotts and the Fox News, because they're not friends of America. And on that very serious note, I say, see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hallie Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Hallie Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at HallieCasserJayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Hallie CJ Show. Until next time, this is Hallie Casser-Jayne.